Hi, everybody. Um, Let me just share my screen here, the slideshow. Okay, so my talk's going to be on, I want to understand what work and labor means, what it looks like in the cryptocurrency and blockchain industry. This is part of my wider dissertation project. And full disclosure, much of this presentation is a lot of it's pulled from a paper I'm working on with my supervisor, Stephen Tufts. On this call right now. So hi, Steve. So just a quick outline here. I'm going to problematize cryptocurrency from a geography perspective. I'm going to go through some of the discourses, some of the literature that exists on crypto already. I'm going to try and stake my theoretical claim and work through some geography theory as it relates to crypto, try and come to a theoretical idea about crypto geographies. And then I'm going to kind of interrogate three debates in labor geography and specifically how they correspond to the three ways in which workers produce crypto landscapes. So first, the problem, cryptocurrency has, been in the media quite a bit the past few years. I mean, it's kind of fallen out of everybody's attention the past maybe year or two, but it was definitely a big deal during the years of the pandemic. And, Bitcoin, of course, reached, astronomical kind of heights as a speculative asset. And crypto is kind of largely thought of in terms of financialization, technological innovation, but I want to understand how it actually has a geography, how we can kind of trace what is considered to be this kind of ethereal, virtual thing, and kind of trace its materiality and how it's actually grounded in the real world, how it actually has a geography, and specifically, I want to understand how it has a labor geography. How can crypto inform labor geography and the debates in that subfield, and vice versa? How can labor geography inform cryptocurrency? So just some of the literature, I've kind of simplified this into two camps. The first being the Bitcoin boosters, as I call them. These are the proponents who believe that crypto and blockchain and everything that it in that world is extremely innovative. It's going to disrupt digital capitalism. It's going to create new forms of value and decentralize all forms of exchange. And this is supposed to be some sort of inherent good. Even progressive scholars argue that blockchain and crypto have great potential for worker liberation. Some people say this is going to create these new boom towns, these new energy powerhouses, and realistically, a lot of these promises have failed to deliver. People on the other side of the debate, these crypto critics, as I've kind of framed it, they highlight Bitcoin's kind of inherent right-wing politics, this association with cyber libertarianism and the Austrian School of Economics, this inherent kind of anti-government, anti-state intervention ideology. And the industry's despite some early hopes that it might be an opportunity for some indigenous people to, kind of counter the colonial state apparatus, the Canadian dollar, for example. A lot of the industry has been kind of criticized for its neo-colonial practices around the world, especially related to some microfinance and microloan type behavior in some global South countries. So beyond that, I think some key theories, theoretical interventions in geography can inform us, inform our understanding about cryptocurrency. Firstly, a traditional economic Marxist understanding of financial accumulation can help us understand the rise of alternative currencies as a response to financial crisis. And it explains this creation of new assets or fictitious capital and the pressure to deregulate finance and delegitimize the state. Cryptocurrency bubbles can also be described as arising from overaccumulated capital that needs a spatial fix, kind of following David Harvey's intervention years ago. And as well, Neil Smith's idea of uneven development, we can kind of understand cryptocurrency mines, these physical spaces where crypto is actually produced, as developing unevenly. And finally, Doreen Massey's call to explore geography of industry and jobs through the spatial organization of the social relations of production is also important. But all that said, a traditional economic Marxism does not allow us to understand the entire story about cryptocurrencies and crypto geographies. They're also produced through political struggle. And to that end, labor geography, which foregrounds workers as sentient, proactive players with the capacity to produce space themselves. Kind of following Andrew Herod's intervention here, this is also important to understand crypto, is what I'm arguing, and I'll touch on that more in a minute. But just briefly, racial capitalism is another theoretical school of thought that I'm trying to incorporate. Cryptocurrencies and blockchain also produce geographies of inequality under racial capitalism, and tech is not always a neutral, apolitical tool, as Arua Benjamin shows. Specifically with blockchain and crypto, the underlying code, which is called a smart contract, which is smart because it's automated and governed by algorithms rather than people, has been linked to kind of legacies of white supremacy, patriarchy, colonialism, racial capitalism. The contract, the legacy of the contract as it relates to personal property rights. Property under English common law has traditionally meant property for white European settler populations, and so it's been linked by many scholars to these kind of legacies. And so that's also important to understand here when we look at cryptocurrencies. So moving on briefly here to the debates in labor geography, because I'm aware that I'm short on time, but firstly, this question of labor agency. How do workers make space for themselves, improve their material welfare in financialized economies? Number two, how can a tradition with labor geography being a tradition with roots in orthodox economic Marxism, how can it incorporate questions of race and gender? And finally, number three, the production of nature. So how do workers produce and respond to environmental challenges? And this isn't specifically important in the ecological crisis we're living through right now. So now we'll turn to three issues, and I'll wrap up on these three issues where workers are producing crypto landscapes in contradictory ways. So we have pension fund investments in cryptocurrencies as the first, and this speaks to the first labor geography debate I just discussed. Number two, the populist sentiments of individual workers who do not feel included by the financial system. And third, community struggles and protests over disinvestment in crypto mining and protests over its environmental implications. So first, we have pension funds. So pension funds are major players in finance, and Canadian pension funds specifically are some of the largest in the world. And fundamentally, pension funds consist of workers' retirement savings. And unfortunately, during the crypto bubble, a lot of them got burned on some significant investments in crypto. So you see the Ontario teachers wrote off a $95 million loss after the FTX crypto exchange went bankrupt. And similarly, the Quebec public sector union also wrote off like a significant investment. And this kind of shows, the persistent challenge of labor geographers, of workers trying to, stake out their claim and produce space in the financialized economy has these contradictions. Cryptocurrency doesn't necessarily further workers' interests, especially given the environmental consequences, which I'll touch on in a minute. But in order to, increase their retirement savings, that they're kind of encouraged or have no other option but to make these highly speculative investments, which can backfire. So this is an interesting example of how crypto and labor kind of collide. Number two here, we have populism. So on the right here, I have a picture of a live stream from the trucker convoy in Ottawa over a year ago now. But this is, of course, a popular movement in which a lot of the truckers who were protesting the vaccine mandates were actually funded by and were able to kind of sustain themselves on donations, many of which was donated through cryptocurrency. This is an example of one trucker receiving Bitcoin on a live stream. So this was definitely part of the movement. And then conservative MP Pierre Poilievre here on the left, who is now the leader and leading all the polls, as last I checked, in Canadian politics. he jumped on the bandwagon. He saw this as an opportunity to kind of build support during his leadership campaign. And we can see here how enthusiasm for cryptocurrency among the right and far right, kind of, white supremacist groups, cryptocurrency, they can hide sources of funding and also appeal to a sense of liberation from the global financial system. Workers who are excluded from the financial economy, either with no pensions or no savings, no significant assets, they can reassert their positions in racialized capitalisms and the hierarchy by investments no longer controlled by the elite. So this is kind of something that I think Polyev is definitely tapping into. And this is, you can again see how workers, in this case truckers, are kind of tied in with this. And then my third and final kind of example is a Bitcoin mine in upstate New York, specifically in Dresden, which is a small community on Seneca Lake in the Finger Lakes region, not too far from Toronto, really. A Bitcoin mine has become a political flashpoint after New York State legislature placed a moratorium, kind of a partial temporary ban on the expansion of Bitcoin mining. A lot of labor unions actually got involved and either supported or opposed this moratorium. The picture on the upper right, you see workers who work at the Green Ridge Power Plant, which they're represented by the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. They actually supported the expansion of the industry, so they opposed the ban on crypto mining. They think it brings great jobs to the community, great high-paying jobs. On the other hand, you can see in the bottom left here, there are protests, and there continue to be protests against the expansion of the Bitcoin mining industry from other labor unions, including the healthcare workers and agricultural workers in the industry, who are concerned about the potential pollution, among other environmental hazards. So here again, we see cryptocurrencies increasingly turned to as a source of local economic development, and it comes at a high cost environmentally. In a lot of cases, it requires extensive amounts of energy to actually produce the cryptocurrencies. Fields of computers are required to power these networks, and so crypto mining then becomes this site of contest between workers, between labor unions who are struggling, not only for jobs but for their material welfare, including the environment as well. So where to go from here? I definitely think it's important to widen and open the labor geography's theoretical scope, specifically as it relates to theorizing race and whiteness and gender as it relates to cryptocurrencies. I think crypto presents an opportunity for the field to do this, and I think that that's something that I can hopefully contribute to. And to that end, my field work is beginning soon. It will be beginning soon, later this year, or in 2024. And so I'm very much looking forward to kind of getting out in the field, interviewing some people and seeing what people think about this new economy, and where it's going, and what it means for workers. So thanks everybody for taking the time to listen.
My name is Daniela Petrovski, and Ayesha is the co-author of this paper. We are both PhD candidates at the School of Human Resource Management at York University, and we'll be talking about, can we prevent abusive supervision behavior at remote work by reducing technostress? And so technostress is a particular type of stress experienced by remote workers emerging from the inability to cope with the new technology requirements. So this stress especially increased during the pandemic for everybody, but especially for supervisors and managers. So many employees also had to adopt to work from home with no prior preparation for it, how to use technology and navigate work from home. And this created extra demands at many levels, such as omnibus, task, social, and personal. And this triggered stress, anxiety, and burnout among the remote workers, and this includes workers and supervisors. So supervisor stress is one of the antecedents or causes of abusive supervision. So previous research has shown that. And therefore, the increased technostress in remote work might have led to some supervisors to increase their abusive supervision behaviors. Abusive supervision is damaging because it leads to various negative outcomes such as reduced creativity, reduced time management, decreased cognitive energy, etc., which at the end leads to negative outcomes for the organization. And so we hypothesized that supervisor technostress leads to negative affect, which leads to abusive supervision behaviors. The gap in the literature that we're trying to address is that there is no research on how to alleviate, how to reduce abusive supervision in remote work, or maybe to eliminate it, hopefully. So therefore, the aim of this study is to develop a conceptual framework to explain how technostress leads to abusive supervision behaviors. And we're drawing on this job demands, resource model, and theoretical framework. So in doing so, we try to expand the literature on remote work, technostress, and abusive supervision, and also to advance this theoretical model in the context of remote work. So the job demands resources model is a theoretical framework that talks about how stress can reduce resources such as motivation, and with that affect outcomes. And so on the right side, you can see just a part of that picture of what this model represents. Job demands can cause stress, while job resources can increase motivation. So on one hand, we have job demands, and the other job resources. And when the demands are high, overlap, like go overboard the resources, then it can cause all kinds of negative outcomes. So research has shown that this model can predict burnout and disengagement. And we're saying that technostress increases job demands, which can cause negative affect, and with that abusive supervision behaviors. So practical solution, we suggest that while using this framework, job resources can include support, autonomy, and feedback. And so in this case, at remote work, the literature says that there is a concept called techno work engagement, which includes technology-related job resources such as autonomy, social support, and self-efficacy. And these would have the effect to reduce stress, and with that to improve work conditions associated with using technology at work. So here's the model that we propose. On the left side, you see how overload, technological overload, invasion, sudden use of using technology, then techno uncertainty and complexity and insecurity, all these tend to act as stressors for the supervisor in remote work while using technology, and this can lead to abusive supervisory behaviors. On the other hand, we have supervisor autonomy, social support, and self-efficacy, which can act as a buffer. So they all contribute to something called supervisor work techno engagement. And this can moderate this relationship between stress and abusive supervision, such as that it can reduce the abusive supervision behaviors. And so in summary, technostress is a stress caused, increased by using technology at work and inability to cope with these demands. We predict that supervisors' technostress can be one of the antecedents or causes for abusive supervision behaviors. And this is important because abusive supervision is damaging for organizations, and there is a need to reduce it or eliminate it. So this study develops this conceptual framework to explain how technostress leads to abusive supervision behaviors and proposes practical implications such as increasing techno work engagement, which includes autonomy, social support, and self-efficacy. And in doing so, this study expands the knowledge of the issues and possible solutions at remote work in general. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pelumi. I'm in my final year in Human Resources Management at York University. Over the course of this year, I have worked with Dr. Hannah Johnson on research, the findings of which I'll be presenting today. By the end of this presentation, I want you to have a better understanding of the challenges that workers face regarding telework and the roles unions have been playing and can continue to play as it pertains to remote work and telework, as well as the important work they can continue to do to support their teleworking members. Over the course of the year, a significant portion of my research has been geared towards Public Services International's Digital Bargaining Hub. Public Services International is a global union federation of public service workers and has 30 million members worldwide. The hub is an online resource for trade unionists that provides real-world bargaining clauses, framework agreements, and guidance on digital issues that can be used at the bargaining table. I have worked on sourcing, analyzing, and classifying different clauses pertaining to digitalization, telework, and remote work for the bargaining hub. I have analyzed the clauses, guidances, and framework agreements contained on the hub, as well as an additional Canadian contract language from a report written by Jim Stanford titled The Bargaining Tech. My analysis of this data sources provide me with the findings for this presentation. Existing literature has found that there are various risks and challenges associated with telework. I'm going to share some of these challenges, which are already well documented. What I want to address are these three questions. The first being, what are the challenges associated with telework? Second, how are unions working to address these challenges? And lastly, have some challenges been more addressed through collective bargaining than others? Before I start with question one, I want to explain what telework is. Telework refers to a work arrangement in which employees perform their work duties from a location different from the traditional workplace. It often involves the use of personal electronic devices. Let me give you an idea of what the telework landscape looks like. Telework has been a global phenomenon with the rapid increase due to the global pandemic. The adoption of telework has reshaped the work environment as we know it. The very notion of work has surpassed conventional limitations, empowering individuals to contribute from any global corner at any point in time. Data on telework is mostly collected at a national level. Here we have data on the European Union, the USA, and Canada. Even though the Digital Bargaining Hub is a global database, the majority of our current language in the database comes from these countries and regions. What was telework like before the pandemic? The graph on the left shows a simple progression of teleworkers in the EU from 2011 to 2021. And based on the data sources, there was a significant similar exponential growth in the number of teleworkers across different regions. On the right side of the screen, we have a graph from Statistics Canada that highlights the percentage of employees working from home in Canada and the United States from May 2020 to December 2021. While this research was done to highlight the difference in status, it is relevant to this project. For Canada during this time period, almost 45% of workers were engaged in telework for most of their working hours. Now the figure for full-time Canadian workers is 25%. While this is a decrease in the rate of telework since the height of the pandemic, it is still significantly higher than it was before the pandemic. For example, in 2016, less than 5% of Canadian employees were engaged in telework. Now, the current work from home situation. While workers were initially required to work from home because of pandemic-related reasons, now many workers are choosing to work from home. Why would workers want to work from home? Flexibility, lower costs of working from home, specifically around transportation and time, are some factors that have influenced these choices. For example, these numbers are from the United States. On the right, we have a sample that shows percentage of workers that can work remotely from at least part-time. 58% of the sample population of workers say they can work remotely at least part-time, with 35% saying they can work from home full-time, and 25% saying they can work from home anywhere between 1 to 4 days a week. Taking a look at employees' choices pertaining to remote work on the left, we see that when offered the option, 87% of workers in this survey choose to work from home remotely, or at least for some of their working week, spending an average of 3 days a week working from home. It is evident that people still choose to work from home, even though there's a significantly lower risk of virus contagion at this point. Telework is a cross-cutting issue, and there are many different issues that intersect with telework. These are some of the most prevalent issues associated with telework. The first challenge is working time. Telework can blur the boundaries between work and personal life. Employees may find it challenging to disconnect from work when their home is also their workplace. Work-life balance. As telework can blur the boundaries between personal and work life, it is essential for workers to be protected against the risk of overworking and working all the time. Reachability. The separation between workers' personal time and working time has been blurred, and this has been shown to have significant negative effects on workers' health. Slightly less discussed are issues pertaining to data rights and protection. Who owns the data that is collected during telework? Is employees' privacy being respected by the employers? And regarding health and safety, how are workplace safety standards applied in workers' homes? Are employees at the risk of workplace isolation? Having answered question 1, I want to share what we have found about how collective bargaining has helped and will continue to help shape remote work. In other words, how are unions responding to these issues through negotiations? Collective bargaining has long been used for addressing workplace issues, such as occupational health and safety, compensation, etc. While telework is a newer issue, collective bargaining can play the same crucial role in addressing the risks associated with telework by providing a regulatory framework. When we look at our data, these are the type of languages we see. When it comes to working time, unions can negotiate clear guidelines on working hours, ensuring that workers have set start and end times to prevent overworking. Negotiating for clauses related to monitoring of working hours can also help contribute to preventing issues arising from overwork. With work-life balance, negotiating these reasonable boundaries on availability can help employees maintain their mental health. And with reachability, unions have been negotiating for workplace email and mobile work policies for phones, along with provisions for disconnection, and these can contribute to maintaining a healthy work-life balance. With data rights and protections, unions can negotiate data protection and security measures, ensuring that employees' personal and work-related data is handled safely and in compliance with relevant laws and regulations. Defining the ownership and control of data generated during telework and remote work, making it clear whether it belongs to the employer or the employee. And with health and safety, unions can bargain to ensure that employers provide necessary equipment, technical support, and resources to maintain the health and safety of remote workers. Collective bargaining can also help to establish standards for home offices, including ergonomic requirements, lighting, and ventilation, to ensure employees have a safe and comfortable workspace. The data used for this presentation has clear gaps. We don't have access to every collective agreement in the world, but we do have the largest open access global database of digital bargaining clauses. Based on those data, these are the trends we have observed. In total, based on our data sources for this presentation, we identified 60 telework clauses, and in addition to the risks mentioned before, unions are also bargaining to establish language that will prevent their teleworkers from these trends above. The data shows us that unions are bargaining to establish language on numerous issues, and this is depicted above. Amongst all the telework clauses identified, the circles are representative of the extent to which these issues are being bargained by unions. Simply put, the bigger circles represent the issues with the most language clauses on our hub, and the smaller circles represent the issues that need to be addressed more. For example, relating to collective bargaining agreements and employment status, we found that unions are bargaining to ensure that teleworkers are not treated differently from non-teleworkers, and that their participation in telework does not jeopardize their employment status. For example, are they provided with the same promotion opportunities and the same training opportunities? In terms of equity and inclusion, unions are bargaining to ensure, for example, that collective agreement language promotes equal opportunities for marginalized workers, and that technology systems and procedures are barrier-free. My review finds that significant gaps exist in these areas, and some of which I have spoken about, and these are the areas that union movement need to be working if they aim to develop the right tools to support trade unions in negotiations over digitalization. I will conclude this presentation with my opinion on what needs to be done in the future. In my opinion, in order for progress to be made in this field, I think it is paramount for a combination of resources for the development of clauses that can progress these issues. This is why the Public Services International's Digital Bargaining Hub can be a great resource for unions, as it provides real-world bargaining clauses, framework agreements, and guidances. Thank you.